Welcome to the Arms Slice Podcast.
Yeah, thanks, man.
I got Don Edwards here today, which for me is a huge treat. Thanks for joining me, man.
Appreciate it, man. It's a treat to be here. I know we've been talking about doing this for a while, and the first time we were supposed to do it, kind of, a buddy of ours got in a wreck and kind of messed up the whole plan. But here we are.
Too long. I had that buddy in here yesterday. He actually told the story. He told the whole version of the story because I actually hadn't talked to him much since then.
He probably told his version of the story.
I filled him in on a few blanks since we happened to be there. Yeah. But he described you and Sam as being the QRF for that thing. So
we were in the emergency room with him. Yeah. Some of that he probably doesn't remember.
I couldn't imagine how he could. So but anyway, man, listen, we're at SHOT Show 2024. Right. For those people watching and listening, we're in the Venetian Hotel. We got a little room here, and we're set up, so if it looks different, that's why. I think it was probably 6 months ago, or maybe a little less, maybe 4 months ago, we're like, Don, you going to SHOT Show? Scott, you going to SHOT Show? Let's make this thing happen this time. Yeah. And so here we are. And let me just kick this off by saying, when I first kind of entered into this space and the way that I entered into it, I was just trying to kind of gobble up all the things that were out there. And I was looking for instruction, and I was looking for I was looking for intelligent conversations on topics and subject matter that at the time resonated with me and that I felt were super important. And I heard a lot of on the side conversations that sometimes I was confused by, I was turned off by, and whatever. And along the way, you start getting introduced to all this stuff. It's equipment, it's gear, there's guns, there's handguns, there's rifles, there's optics, there's night vision, there's belts, there's plate holders, there's all these things. And so there's
a rabbit hole. You could go way down deep into it.
And it just keeps going. I mean, it's so hard, as you start to get into it, to kind of, as a new consumer coming in, like, where do I start with all this? But I think what I started to do, this is how my head works, like kind of categorize people. Like, here's the dude that resonates with me on this subject matter of these topics, or here's the guys that keep coming up in other people's conversations.
Right.
And you were one of those guys. And and you were on the East Coast. And so as I was trying to go out and get training and whatever, I didn't understand that guys like you travel all over the country. Yeah. Train all different types of people at all different levels and in all different ways. And by the time I kind of discovered that, you were booked out, so I couldn't really jump into anything.
Yeah. And I do get out to the, West Coast. I'm a California boy. Yeah. And, so in my heart, I want to get behind enemy lines, as I say, as much as possible. Yeah. And whatnot. But it doesn't happen as much as I would like. So, the opportunities for me to train with dudes out West is not as much for some reason. It's just kind of, not that I'm a regional guy, but
just works out that way.
Yeah, it works out that way. And, we're getting some stuff going on like here in the Vegas area. And one of my buddies from SoCal, basically we set it up here because it's sometimes easier for them just to drive over than it is to find a range to train at and stuff. Plus he wanted to do a shoot house class, and we have a good place here in Vegas to do that. So Pro Gun Club. Right. So his crew, they're all coming over from San Diego and Orange County and all that.
Good times.
Oh yeah. It's great. I love it. Like I said, I'm not scared to go to California.
Yeah. Let's talk about that actually. Yeah. So let's kind of catch up on your background a little bit. Okay. Just like, I was shocked, like in the conversations we had or whatever, it didn't come up till later that, you're a Central Valley guy.
Yeah. I'm from Central California, Visalia, right pretty much in the middle of the state as far as I'm concerned,
It is. That's the middle of the state.
Gateway to the Sierras. Yeah. That's our claim to fame.
Right outside of
lots of food.
Kings Canyon National Park, which plays second fiddle, and it shouldn't. It's way underrated. To Yosemite, which it borders. Yeah.
And I used to spend a lot of summers up there in Yosemite. One of my high school buddies used to get a job every year up there, and he would live in his mom and dad's RV trailer. Yeah. And how his job was to go around and dump the trash at the campgrounds and all that stuff like that.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, and he lived up there for free. And I think he'd have another job working at one of the food stands at Yosemite. Yeah, at the village there or whatever. And that was his summer job.
If I knew then what I know now, I would have tried to do exactly the same thing, man. Yeah, it sounds like the life. Yeah, it's a beautiful part of the country. I actually have a lot of family in that part of the woods and agriculture out there. So yeah. All right, so you grow up out there.
So I grew up there, joined the Army, ended up out in the Southeast. So I spent a good portion of my military career and my life and all that. I don't know if that's not really how I ended up there, but it's an easy location for me to be because I live in Florida now.
Okay.
But Fort Benning, I was an Army Ranger, 3rd Ranger Battalion for first 4 years. Ended up getting out for a little bit and then coming back in through the National Guard system, the Reserve Guard, Special Forces. 11th group, then ended up in 20th Special Forces Group, again based out of Florida, and that's kind of how I ended up semi-permanently in Florida.
Let's talk about that journey for a second. So you go in the Army, did you get out as a Ranger and then go back in?
Yeah, so I did one enlistment and got out.
Got it.
And then trying to figure out what I was going to do post Army.
When was this in time?
That was from 88 to 91.
Gotcha.
So November 91 is when I got out, right before those guys went to Mogadishu and all that stuff. So, interesting fact, a lot of those guys, if you know that story, the majority of the dudes that are depicted in that movie are good friends of mine or old friends of mine. So, so that's the era Ranger that I was. So yeah, that time frame, Operation Just Cause, I was a participant in that down in Panama during that time frame. Jumped in there.
I remember that well.
Yeah,
I remember that well. You're not that much older than me.
Yeah, but I am older. Yeah,
maybe a little
I am
bit.
the oldest guy in the room
maybe
right now.
Maybe a little bit. But okay, so then you get back in and you enter back in through the Guard, and you mentioned something about soft there. Yeah,
so. I ended up in 20th Special Forces Group. The weird route that I ended up was I was joining the reserves, and there used to be reserve Special Forces, and they were called 11th Group and 12th Group, and I was in 12th Group, and just about ready to start going off to the selection and all that stuff, and they got disbanded. They did away with all the reserve Special Forces, and I ended up transferring to 19th Special Forces Group, which was the Guard. So most of those guys ended up getting absorbed into the National Guard groups. Through 19th Group, ended up going to Special Forces Selection and the Q course, we call it, and all that. During that time frame, ended up getting a divorce. So that was kind of a drift again.
It's kind of a common tale.
And my buddies that I was going through the course with were Florida guys from 20th Group. And they're like, hey, move to Florida.
Come down, hang out
we'll
with
get
us.
An apartment in Gainesville. It'll be great.
Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah. So that's what I did. And then pretty much I've lived permanently in the Southeast region, Florida, Georgia, since. I don't think I've so as far as residency goes, but as you mentioned, I travel to teach.
Yep.
So I tell people I got a mortgage and my family lives in Florida. My truck's registered in Florida, but I live at the Hampton Inn.
I was just going to say, we're out of the front seat of your pickup truck.
Hampton Inn, I've got tons of Hilton Honors points. Yeah. They're great for family vacations. I get 1 million points a year. So it's like free,
So let's talk about this transition piece out of the military. So again, you just kind of talk through that. I mean, you're talking about a thing that is steeped in tradition and history. There's a lot of lineages there. And when you get out, especially at the time you were in, I think it's a little different. I don't know. I can't speak to this, but it seems like there are like eras, that you can kind of speak to. You mentioned, a couple of those things, and people know what those things are. They understand. Yeah. But let's talk about like it wasn't deep Afghanistan for 20 years or 10 years there or wherever else. So I think that gets lost because a lot of people that tell their stories these days are younger guys that are just kind of freshly out and they're starting their new businesses or they're in their new ventures, and people are wanting to talk to them, and so they hear a lot of that stuff, and they're seeing how they're transitioning now. What was available to you coming out of the military then versus what might be different for guys now?
Compared to now, they're really, the Army, and I can only speak to the Army, didn't seem to have the types of programs they have now for guys to help them transition. And of course the GWAT hadn't happened yet. Right. So the massive appreciation Not saying that, we didn't have it bad like the Vietnam era guys did at all, but you were just a dude who was in the Army before. There was no, you weren't a special because you'd been in the Army.
There was not an association with really anything.
Right. It was cool that you did this, but nobody knew anything. And this was like pre-internet type stuff too. Yep. So the fanboyism and stuff like that of, the operator.
That's what I'm talking about.
Wasn't a thing. So it's just like, nobody knew anything about you other than what you told them face to face, pretty much, and whatnot. So, but as far as like programs for like job stuff, you went through it, but it was just like a briefing from like a dude from, what's JB Hunt Trucking Company and Snyder Nat. They were trying to see if you would come, do their thing, and, how to write a resume from a dude who's had a government job his whole life, kind of thing, and whatnot. So it was, I guess looking back, I appreciate the attempt, and I think they're just better at it now.
Good.
And whatnot. So, for me, I was, my family business back in the day was back in California and in Visalia, and it was in the nursery business. Okay. So my belief was I'm going to go home and join back into the family business and really just, the life situation at home.
Yep.
You hear like, never go back home. I should have heeded some of that advice, but I had to go back home to learn that it was true, kind of thing, because it just hadn't changed,
It wasn't what you'd remember.
It wasn't what I had hoped it to be as an adult. You
changed.
I'd grown up, but I still had memories of abusiveness type stuff.
Gotcha.
And I was like, and by the way, now I'm a trained killer.
Yeah.
So it's like
not a good place to be.
If I remember how you treated me when I was a teenager, and I know what I would do to you if we were in another country right now. It's like, okay, I need to get out.
We shouldn't be.
I need to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, gotcha.
Kind of thing. So, so that didn't go quite as well as I'd hoped. So, fresh start. Moved over to Arizona. Actually, lived in the Phoenix area for a little while, and that's when I was going to school.
Okay.
And with the idea that, hey, I'm going to maybe go back in the Army, get a commission, and do this. And then I started to realize, I don't know if being an officer is what I want to do, kind of thing, because I liked the hands-on.
Yep, doing the job.
I'd been a ranger for 4 years.
Doing the job.
And I really liked that. And then I got connected with the SF side of the house. Guys, I'm like, you know what? And then I was like, oh, maybe I want to be an SF officer. I was like, no, that's kind of gay too. Yeah. I like being the guy.
We want to be doing the job.
Yeah, I like being the guy putting the charge on the door and going through it.
I appreciate that.
Not the guy making the plan and watching everybody do it kind of thing. Nothing against you officers out there, but you know what I'm talking about, right? So I kind of scrapped that idea. Plus, I don't like college. I'm not really
for me either,
not really good at that.
It wasn't for me either.
So it was, I think I was a better NCO than I would have been an officer anyways. So ended up doing that. And like I said, ended up in the Southeast in Florida. And I actually retired from 20th Special Forces Group. And I spent a fair amount of time on and off of full-time active duty working with some of their counter-drug programs and stuff like that. And then that evolved into a training thing. And that's kind of how I started loving the training stuff, was just I was managing a training program that we did for law enforcement out of Florida, and it was mostly staffed by 20th Group guys and things of that nature. So it's like I like sharing the knowledge and stuff like that.
Okay, that gets us, fills in a lot of gaps for me, man, that I didn't know. Okay, so you start training, and then when do you realize this could be like a business thing? Are there steps in this process, or do you just like I'm starting my own training company?
No, it was definitely an evolution.
Let's talk about it.
So during that time frame, in being a member of 20th Group, there was a guy there who was a federal agent, and he kind of latched onto me and another buddy of mine. And his thing for his agency was he was a the head of their defensive tactics program.
Okay.
And he was like, hey, you guys come to this training thing that I'm doing, right? And before you know it, the two of us are like instructors in these programs. And then while I'm the training manager at the Florida Counter-Drug Training Academy, I get a call from him. He's like, hey, they're going to hire an assistant for me and you're going to apply for it. And so I get hired and I end up there. So it was like, as a student, I became like in the instructor, the teaching, the learning, all that stuff. I just evolved into it. I didn't set out to be where we are now. It
just landed in your lap,
but I liked it.
You had to figure it out.
Yeah, but I liked it. So it was kind of like I evolved into that position of like, I really like this. This is interesting to me. I like showing people what I'd learned. And I had, through those things, I had the opportunity to kind of be mentored by some of the pioneers of, it was law enforcement training, but understanding, how people learn, but also how the body responds under stress, sympathetic nervous system, and stuff like that.
Some next level stuff.
So especially then, we understand, the things that the body does naturally under stress. Why wouldn't we create self-defense programs based around those?
Okay.
It's not that you're not going to be able to focus on your front sight because of perceptual narrowing, but what if? Why not have a technique that works if that happens to you?
And it's kind of novel at the time, right?
And it still is, and people still want to argue that you can train through that, but not everybody has the resources and the ability or the stamina to train through that.
That's a solid point.
So it's like I can't make every street cop a tier 1 operator.
Nope.
Nor is there time or energy or finances to do that. So you only have so much time to get, and I'm using them as an example, but it could very well just be you and your wife coming to a weekend self-defense shooting course.
That's it.
That's all I got with you.
Until
maybe next year when I'm back in town and you come see me again, right? So I'm not going to make you a door kicker in that amount of time. But if I can, give you techniques and skills that are easy for you to master because there's something that your body does naturally anyways. They're not, trick shooting and stuff like that. If you decide you love it and you want to get into performance-based type shooting and stuff like that, which, I know you've, talked to other guys that do that, you can do that. But, the defensive shooting, which I think most like cops fall into the basic defensive shooter category, that's what they need to survive and win. And, and so I loved studying that stuff and learning about that stuff, and it just kind of evolved. And then after my second deployment as an SF guy in Iraq, I was a team sergeant. I came back and I went back to my job at the academy, and I was like, this is pretty freaking boring.
Compared to what you were doing.
Compared to, I was a team sergeant in combat, a special forces team sergeant in Iraq. It's like, it doesn't get much better than that.
It's right? Hard shift,
So I was like, man, and then, so I had friends who were doing contract work and stuff like that for like Blackwater and things like that. So I just started putting feelers out, being like, hey, tell me about this. What do you think? And then before you know it, I had a friend of a friend reach out to me to apply for an organization called the Asymmetric Warfare Group.
Okay.
And,
Is this a private entity?
It was a DOD unit that was comprised. It was born out of the counter IED program.
Okay.
When IEDs were like a kind of a new problem
to come up. Yeah.
And then when they wanted more problem solvers on the ground. So the way the AWG, we called it, was set up was half of the guys and gals in it were green suiters, as we call them. They were military, and the other half were contractors who were former military SMEs, and usually they'd be working side by side. So if you had an intel guy working here, you'd have a retired intel guy working right next to him who maybe came from the special operations community.
Okay.
Or something like that. So not everybody in there was a former SOF guy, but if you were a boots on the ground deploying guy and you were a civilian, most of us were either SF or former Delta guys.
Okay.
We had a couple NSW dudes here and there, and Force Recon guys. And I did that for a while because of budget issues and stuff like that. I moved over to a similar program, same company that I worked for.
Okay.
Doing that. But so I got to be embedded with Army units, boots on the ground, going out on operations missions. As a civilian, I was kitted out and armed almost exactly the way I was when I was an SF guy.
Wow.
Going out on combat operations as an advisor for those guys. So I did that for several years.
Okay.
And most of the time it was like 4 months in country, 4 months out.
Okay.
And while you were
there's deployments with this too.
That's how we did it. So the idea was I would spend so much time embedding with these units in a region that I was kind of like going back to all the time. So I was in Afghanistan. They call it RC South, which is the Kandahar region down there. So I was going in and out of there every 4 months at a time. So I was kind of a subject matter expert on what was happening there. So I'd be embedded with these units, and then I would go back and spend time with the units that are getting ready to come into there, actually replacing the people that I was just with and helping them with what's going on that they need to prepare for training wise and stuff like that. So as a dude who had already realized that I love teaching people what I learned, it was awesome.
You were learning very fast.
Dude, I had so much job satisfaction out of it because
I'm sure,
because I knew the problems that they were going to face, and I could go to them in their training cycle and actually help them turn their ship and be like, this is the azimuth you need to be on. And because you can't do that once they're already in country, then I could meet them and be like, hey, how's it going?
Right.
What can I do for you there? Because then I had reach back support to a lot of programs and like material solutions, as we called them, that they might need and stuff like that. So that was just one of the aspects. And the other one was just like, if we had enemy TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures that they were starting to do new, I would go there to that unit, be like, okay, what's going on?
Learn it.
If I had a solution for it, I would share it with them. Or if they came up with a solution, we would write a white paper on that and spread it out to everybody else so that when that TTP migrated over here, these guys were already ready for it.
Yeah. So so
I loved that. It was just like, that was like the ultimate, like if you like teaching people and training people, and especially in the combat arts, I was like, I loved it.
So you're not the first guy I've talked to that was there or working in an opportunity when things were evolving as fast as they were evolving.
Yeah.
To be able to get the feedback, not just be the guy on the ground, but the guy on the ground that's getting a lot of feedback from other guys on the ground to develop programs or evolve programs to meet the needs of what the actual need was. Not, we're going to prep you, then you go, then I don't see you for another year or two. You come back and you go like, okay, you taught me this stuff, but what we really saw was this over here. And then it comes back, then you tell the guy like, well, this is what, and then you evolve the program, which takes time.
Yeah.
To then teach the guys. You're behind all the time.
Our jobs at both AWG and it was called the JET, the Joint Expeditionary Team, was basically to help stay ahead of the enemy threats evolution.
Yeah.
To get out in front of it. Oh, it was great. I mean, it was, but we had the support and the intelligence networks behind all this stuff. And there was stuff going on. There were resources like that available that the regular everyday units didn't know about. Stuff that only traditionally special operations units would be taken advantage of. And these things were being made available to conventional Army units. But if they didn't know about them or how to access them, so sometimes I would just be like, hey, look, here, sometimes I'd just do it by email. Like, hey, look, here's the dude I was telling you about. He needs help with this and this. Okay, cool. Let me, shoot you all the info packets, all the intel packets that you need for your AO. And it's like, boom. And they're like, holy crap. Yeah. I wish I knew this last week.
Right. So you're also kind of a hero at the same time. Right?
Try to be.
Yeah, this dude is the guy you want to know.
And that's the thing. We were always, we're civilians. They have no obligation to, on the JET thing, it was the second side of it. We were all civilians, and they were under no obligation to allow us access into them. So, you kind of want to be there, like, holy crap, that was great. You come back anytime you want, other than, that's why also when we were stateside going through their training cycle, we're trying to build rapport with them so that I could walk into the commander's office in Afghanistan, and, with notice. I wouldn't just barge in, but like, hey, I'm going to be coming to your FOB. I'm going to check in with you. Yeah, come on, brother. You know, that's the answer that I want. Not like, oh, I'm kind of busy because I don't really know if I like you that much,
Yeah, so you build tons of relationships and obviously the learning curve is very fast.
Yeah.
You're constantly at the front end of all the new things that are going on. You're hearing about stuff that other people may be really focused in one thing and you were able to kind of get out there.
Yeah.
So you mentioned like coming back and making that hard transition. Like, how long does this go on for before it's like you're timed out or whatever?
Well, during that whole time, I was still in the Guard, and in the middle of there, sometime I actually retired.
Okay.
So I was still a team sergeant, filling both roles and all that, but I was also a civilian. So one of the differences was I was a National Guard SF guy, not a real Green Beret.
Yeah, no, I've heard this story before. Actually,
so I was already a civilian by most accounts. It wasn't like, I'd already had a regular job, and all that stuff and whatnot, even though it was a government job. And while I was home, I was doing training. So Greenline was doing some classes here and there while I was home.
Okay, so so somewhere in there, Greenline comes together.
Yes.
When?
Greenline was created initially to be my LLC as a military contractor.
Okay. This makes sense.
So then
so
when
that
I
you
came
can
home,
be hired.
Yeah. So I could save money on taxes.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, I gotcha.
Yeah. But
so that's where it starts.
That's kind of where Greenline, the name Greenline began and stuff. Or the company did. And I'd be home for a while, on those 4 months, and I'd teach a combat carbine class or something like that. I had a history already in the night vision world. With another company that I was partners with a couple of buddies that had used to work at ITT when they were the main night vision people. And then they left there, and had been, probably close to 15 years ago, I started, towards the beginning of the GWAT-ish, have been involved in and writing curriculum for like tactical night vision type of training and stuff. So,
so this comes down to like understanding the technology, the evolution of that technology, also application, all the different things. And it's been, that's been a fast moving thing.
That's been growing big time too. So that's how like Greenline kind of began. It was always, Greenline was that, but the training was something I like to do. And I think maybe I had in the back of my mind that might be where I wanted to end up, was what we are today.
Yep.
But it was definitely an evolution. It wasn't like I set out like, I'm going to go print targets with my face on it, make a bunch of stickers and patches and YouTube videos and call myself a firearms instructor. No, this was a progression over, not just as a shooter and a user and a soldier. I hate the word operator, but because I was just, like I said, I was a National Guard Green Beret.
Right.
Not
well played.
Barely qualifies.
Well played. I hear you, but I heard what you just said there, just in terms of the difference in terms of the evolution for you versus, seemingly what it's looked like for maybe others that came after you that exist in sort of the instructor
and it's not
space.
a new, and I don't mean to disparage that. It's just like, but
I've said it a million times, man. Start an Instagram account, take a few shooting videos, put firearms instructor under, in your bio, and you're good.
Hey, right? If you're good at teaching people, that's fine, and if whatever, I don't care. But it's like that's one of the things that I do like to point out to either people that I would do consulting for, because that's one of the things that we do is consulting with industry companies and even law enforcement agencies or entities and stuff like that. Is me and the guys now that I have as instructors, we've been doing this for a long time, so that's why you should value our opinion. We may not know everything, but I've been carrying around an M16 type rifle in my hand since I was, 19 years old. 20 years old. I turned 20 years old in basic, and I just turned 56 last week. So,
and you haven't stopped.
And I'm still, thankfully I get to wake up every day and do what I love to do still. So I feel like at some point, my opinion on these guns has some sort of value.
Yeah, the way I put it,
and how we shoot people with them and fight with them and all that stuff.
So my take on that is this, because I feel the same way. I'm in the fitness space, and I say this all the time. Like the gray hair on my face doesn't sell very well to young, right? In this space, particularly with how fast it moves. Yeah, and I don't care. It's the
gun culture is very similar.
That's what I saw coming in. When I came into it. I was like, dude, this looks exactly the way fitness did, only it's about 10 years behind, like on the social side of things. Anyways, the point of this is just there's two things I would say are kind of like comments or like taglines. One is like, it's the old State Farm commercial, and I say it all the time. Like, like we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. Yeah. But the other,
okay, boomer.
Yeah, that's it. So whatever. Like, okay, whatever. That commercial is effective. Like, in the bottom line is like if I get into trouble, I want to talk to somebody who may understand where I'm coming from, not thinks they understand. So that's one. The other thing is this. I think this is less. This is like kind of taking the emotional piece out, going back to the okay boomer, and that is okay. Let's maybe look at it a different direction. On the off chance that I might know what the fuck I'm talking about, or just on pure chance, just saying, like, maybe just hear me out for a minute, right? And then you might, maybe I might change nothing. I'm not trying to change your mind about anything, but maybe just hear me out. And I think that's something that gets quickly lost. However, I do think as people go through their process, if they make it far enough through, they start to realize, like, yeah, I should probably listen, because these guys are saying the same things these guys are saying. They're just saying them in a little different way. This one's being said with like flash and almost like an overconfidence maybe, or a, you know, like with a weird intention. While the other guy's just gone, this is who I am. I don't know any better, right? Because this is what I've been doing my entire life. Like take it or leave it, right? Kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, like in your, you know, in your industry, in the fitness, and you know, you've seen a lot. You've also studied it a lot. You've studied it for a long time. You know, I've been a student of the gun for decades. You know, I've been trying to figure out better ways to do this. And I know I'm not the smartest guy. I have friends who are way better at this, you know, but they're trying to figure it out for themselves. You know, like an example, I'm not really a gear guy or, you know, gear queer kind of guy. I appreciate great ideas. I don't come up with great ideas, but when buddies of mine like, hey, I'm doing this to modify my gear. I'm like, man, I didn't even realize I needed that. But you know what? I'm going to do that too, because that's a great idea.
That makes sense.
You know, so I'll adopt it. And that's one of the things I think I am good at, is evaluating whether something's a decent idea or not.
A lot of ideas out there, Don.
A lot of them. And even when it comes to shooting, it's like, I tell people in my classes all the time, it's like, I am not a competitive shooter, but I have nothing against it. If I had time, I would be. But I spend all my weekends almost on the range teaching. I don't have time to go to competitions. It's fun as hell. And I was into it, you know, a long time ago, doing, you know, USPSA stuff. And I love going to things like that. But because I don't have time, I'm not going to pretend I'm a subject matter expert in that.
Fair enough.
Know, my lane, if you will, and my experience is fighting other people, mostly with guns. You know, I mean,
it's pretty simple.
I can teach you how to use a knife and a stick and you know, your hands too. But, you know, gunfight type stuff is what I've spent my life trying to master, you know, because it was my job, not because it was a hobby or anything like that. So I think I put a lot of thought into it. I've listened to, you know, my peers and stuff like that. We've learned certain things and we've pressure tested them in a real life environment too. So, you know, I may have a little bit of what we call survivorship bias. It's like I've done certain things and they've worked.
Okay.
But I also try to realize that I don't want to make sure I don't have that. And, you know, like the TTPs, the way we teach, you know, room clearing and stuff like that, it's still being used by the guys at the highest level. Why? Because we haven't figured out a way that works better yet.
Fundamentals,
you know, so, you know, some of those things. And I'm not so in love with the things that I teach that if something better comes up,
right there,
you know, I'm exactly. I don't care. What I care about is the result. I care about, is this a better way to win the fight, to survive the fight? And there are quite a few things that I used to do that I'm not afraid to say, I don't do that anymore. Either that was a bad idea or it just didn't, it wasn't as good of an idea as we thought it was.
It was just an idea at the time. Right. It proved that it wasn't a good one. Yeah.
Right. You know, and you know, if you're not evolving when it comes to this and evolving, and I think in a discerning way, then you know, it's time to quit or it's time to start, you know, paying attention to what, you know. So I like the young guys that are enthusiastic,
piss and vinegar,
because they come up with ideas that I'm like, hey, I don't know if that's 100% right, but I like where you're going with that, and
right.
you know, so I try not to get stuck in the past. I do sometimes, and I've got some instructors, you know, that work for me that would kick me in the butt and be like, you know, quit being a FUD.
Dude, there's not a person out there that doesn't reach back.
Yeah.
It's the experience piece. It's how we developed. You know, that's when it goes into the wisdom that you have is the past. So it's natural that you would reach back to go based on my experience.
Yeah.
How this applied, what it did or didn't do, that I would reach back to it. But what you said there is not being like married to or emotionally invested in any one thing, because in understanding that it can change. That objectivity is super important, because I think that's one of the bigger things that gets lost, particularly in the instructional space, but also just in all the other things. I mean, the gear space, right? You know, the gun space, you know, if we're talking that, I mean, and then there's the challenge of that being stuck in the past with the good idea fairy.
Yeah.
Where everything has to be innovated to the next level. I'm all about innovation. I want to keep up with it. I want to know, like
100%.
Same things. But at the same time, it's like, do we need to do that right now? Like, does that make sense? Or do we just work on the...
Is that a solution to a problem we even have?
Thank you for saying that. It's like you just invented a solution to something that wasn't a problem.
We see that, and we're here at SHOT Show.
Yeah,
and you're gonna go. You're gonna go downstairs,
the best place on earth,
and see that.
Yeah.
And and maybe get off on a tangent, but we talk about products. Guys do that a lot, and what I see is guys use that as a way to maybe sell their products. Like, I don't know how many times I've seen a guy showing me a new sling. I'm like, don't you hate it when your tail on your sling does this? And I was like, I have never encountered that problem that you say is so common.
Such a big deal.
It's like it's such a big deal. It's like it's like I don't know. I don't know what this solves. It's like do you have to act like there was a problem? Can't you just say, hey, this is my take on this?
Oh, that's an interesting perspective.
But dudes just some guys they want to put down something that was before to make their own product, whether it's an actual physical product or a training program, look better. And where I'm going with this is one of the things that I try to always keep in mind and tell people and remind myself all the time is, we stand on the shoulders of giants. Mm-hmm. You didn't start out knowing everything you knew, right? Some guys before us learned everything they could learn and passed that baton to us. Just because we know things they didn't know doesn't mean they're a bunch of fuds that didn't know shit. Mm-hmm. And, that guy moved the football down the field so that we could score a touchdown. Those are the guys that prepared me for combat. Mm-hmm. Do I know things they didn't know? Yeah.
Sure.
Do the guys fighting now know things that I didn't know? Absolutely.
Right.
But, our job, I think, especially if we choose to be, mentors and instructors, is to carry that baton as far as we can and pass it off to those guys. As leaders, we should always be trying to, prepare our replacements. And that was, the way I was groomed in the military is like, you should always be training somebody to take your job.
That's one of the things I got from you early on, Don, actually, was that part of it. And that was what I was searching for, understanding kind of where I was entering in the space kind of late in life. It's late. I mean,
it's never too late.
I'm not 50 yet, but it's never too late, but just kind of late to the game when I was seeing so many young guys. And again, like a lot of those guys that were young were also just coming out of the military, young LEO guys, people that were still in the military, that were trying to make a go at this. And I was like, man, these guys like you, they were fresh out of coming back from some of the hottest places on the planet, with regard to people shooting at one another, including them. So, I was kind of trying to sift through all that and go like, well, who did these guys learn from? Right. And where did they get that information from? Because they had to have gotten it from somewhere. And yes, it's evolving. And everybody was kind of saying the same thing, only they were trying to say it differently, going back to the like, what's the product of the week, and why is my training better than your training, the other guy's training, whatever. And that whole, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Like just that attitude of the only way for me to make my product or me look important is to talk shit about somebody else's product or thing. Yeah. I was looking for people that weren't doing that, and you were one of those guys.
If that's the case, then you don't have a good product.
That was my point. I knew that already.
Yeah.
But nobody
you knew that because you're a businessman.
But nobody was saying that. And I was like, well, hold on. Like, going back to what I saw.
Everybody
none of this is proprietary information, guys.
Yeah.
Like,
I didn't make this stuff. Now, there's a few things that I came up with some ideas here and there, but most of this stuff, I didn't make it up. I packaged it. I worded things to where they make sense to me.
This is your take.
This is me. This is what I think is important, and this is why. Yeah. And this is how I some of the stuff I do, and especially like the Red Dot Pistol class, I explained it as like, this is how I practice to get better at this. Mm-hmm. Just so you understand, this is my personal methodology. If I'm trying to get faster, this is what I do. This is what what I think is important, and try to keep it in that context of, I'm not, might you get better at your competition game taking one of my classes? Sure, maybe. You'd probably be a better shooter anyways, but I'm not going to focus on that because it's not my lane. Go see Ben or Stoker or somebody like that if you want to get better at that stuff. And I'm never going to, claim to be in that space.
I think that's an important thing. You're making a really important distinction there, and how the lines bleed over, and how people start to make assumptions. And you strike me as a guy that, like, exactly who you are and what you're trying to do. And part of that is what I found interesting, and again, going back to all the conversations I've had, kind of get just to where we're sitting here today, is that certain names come up, right, from certain people in certain ways. And that could be good. And when I mean good, I mean that can be, I would say, positive or favorable, or complimentary, maybe is the way to say it. And that can be other things too.
Yeah. Or it could be cautionary.
That's exactly right. And it's only ever been complimentary with you, which I was having this conversation with somebody yesterday, just about like what my gut was telling me, and also kind of like what my heart was telling me, and then checking it with my head, ultimately.
That's a good way to go.
Yeah. And then having these conversations. Yeah. And so I was like, it kind of hit me like, okay, well, maybe my gut and my heart aren't bullshit. Like maybe I should trust that shit more and stop overthinking stuff in my head, because it's worked out. And when I see who's still there, like in those circles and how tight those circles run, and I don't mean that in a bad way, like there's a gatekeeping boys club, kind of dude thing. No, just the good people are looking out for the other good people because they're good people. Right?
Well, and a lot of times, we gravitate towards each other.
That's what I'm saying.
What a lot of people, like if you're a shooting student or whatever, may not realize is that most all of us, especially those of us who've been doing it for a while, are friends. You may see us talking shit to each other on the internet, like, oh, wow, but, we'll be having drinks tonight down at the Circle Bar, hanging out,
That's weird. Like I've never heard anybody do that before. Sam Houston's sitting behind the camera.
Yeah.
Like he's one of my favorites at it.
Yeah.
But anyway,
he used to be my pit bull.
Yeah.
Sam, I can't say anything, but this guy's really being annoying right now.
So it's like, whose car are we taking?
He'd be like, that was in the ARFCOM days, back when,
Yeah. Anyway, the point of that is like, you're right. You guys, people are friends, and not to a fault, where they're going to let their friend. Well, number one, if their friend says something that's out of line, right, or maybe a little off base, or they're teaching something, they come up with some product, whatever, those friends call one another and go, "Hey, man,
what are you doing?
What are you doing?" Like, not "I hate you," you idiot.
Yeah, and the answer might be, "Bro, it's for the grams."
Yeah, Okay, as long as we got that clear,
cool.
right? As long as I think they're clear. But I have recognized that too, that people will call one another out in a healthy way, and that it's not always public, and so people don't always see that.
Well, exactly. There's a lot of that, and it's funny because I was teaching a small class somewhere. I don't even remember where it was, but discussion came up about different guys that I'm friends with and stuff like that. And the guy's like, "You don't understand how wild that is." It's like, I don't see us as celebrities or whatever, but it's like you guys are like celebrities to us, and the fact that you guys also are like friends and know each other and hang out
it's weird,
outside
right?
of things is like so crazy to us. And I was
it's
like,
weird to hear.
Really? I mean, you think it's crazy that I'm friends with Chris Costa?
Right.
What am I supposed to hate? We're supposed to hate each other?
Yeah.
At one time maybe we were a little bit adversarial, but we were younger too. Now, we're older now too. It's like when I was young, probably if the internet was there, could have been one of the guys that was considered,
that right.
The butthole.
That is the thing. Like it's where you are in time and space with regard to like the communication platforms and whatever else. And I see that's the thing I'm talking about, because it probably would have been the same then. It's just not wasn't because it was. Yeah, technology was different, whatever else, and this thing will continue to evolve.
I was a damn airborne ranger. That right there means I'm better than most people, right? And
you wake up and piss excellence, right?
Exactly.
Every single day.
Yeah.
So going back to the friends thing, and I think that more just from like a supportive community, like people talk about community in like the larger sense. And I was always interested in understanding what the community was at the tighter sense, like the communities within the communities. And I kind of look at everything like in a Venn diagram. You got like what is the thing in the middle, and then who are the people, and then what are the other things that they touch around that. And going back to Greenline, and kind of how you talking about the business piece, what I saw was that you were touching things, lots of different things, where everybody else was trying to really specialize or be the dude that did one thing, or he was the subject matter expert on this one thing. And I think this goes back to your experience and all the things that you've done. What I was watching was a couple of things, and this, stick with me here. One was, this would be obvious to people, is like the types of classes that you were teaching.
Yeah.
Like there's pistol there, there's carbine there. This makes sense, right? I mean, it's an instruction company or, an education company. That makes sense. But then I was seeing some other things that were coming up in there. Some of that stuff was the night vision stuff.
Right.
That was a big one. But it was also the groups that you were teaching to. It was both civilian, law enforcement, and some of the folks that were in, I would say, let's just say, decision makers within those communities were talking about what was going on. But the thing that really struck me early on with you was the fact that you had other guys working with you that had kind of their own thing or were their own subject matters in their own space, not by default, just because that's kind of what they spent their time talking about or whatever. But they're working with you, teaching all these different things. And I already mentioned one of those guys like Sam, being involved in that, but are also friends going back with other guys, right out there. And so it wasn't like, what it was interesting was this dude's built a team of people, right, that aren't fighting with everybody, right? They might have their differences. And again, going back, man, there's some shit talking. And you decide, unfortunately, the person on the other end might look at that very differently than the way you're looking at it, but whatever, right?
It's not my problem.
It's not your fucking problem. That's exactly right. But the point of this is I don't want to be, I'm trying to articulate this in what I saw was this team or this group of people that wasn't trying to alienate others, and by the same token, weren't alienating themselves.
Right.
That is a skill, and that is something different than I think a lot of people can do. There's other people I see trying to do it right now, and there's a couple that I think are going to work this out, but they had to make a lot of fucking mistakes, and they had to be. You either love these guys or you hate these guys kind of thing, and now they're trying to kind of bridge the gap. Yeah. Let's talk about that.
Well, I mean, I think what you just described is more of a byproduct, or a result maybe. I never really intended to have like instructors working for me and stuff like that. I mean, we mentioned Sam; he's right over there. Everybody, half you people probably know who he is. Probably more you know who he is than me. But,
well, they will in a couple of weeks because we're going to get him up. We're going to get him on here
too. But so he's been I don't know, my Robin, if you will, for a long time, right?
Which is awesome.
Which has been great.
Which is awesome.
Sometimes it's frustrating, but it's like we've been friends. We've been friends for a long time.
That's how it goes.
And but this was always kind of like he was the assistant on the part-time side, and I never really expected this to be much more than just a one-man show. And then maybe about 2 years ago, I started to realize, if this is going to grow, this is going to be anything bigger than that. And actually a profitable business, which I'm, be the first to tell you, I don't think I'm a great businessman. So I have to get people to help me on that side of the house.
Most of the best coaches are not great business people.
So I'm learning. I'm learning about that. I need to get people to help me on that side of the house, and I'm finally doing that. But I think I did approach Eric Vargas, who's like one of the top snipers in the country world, and he's a good friend of ours, Ranger buddy. I like, do you want to come, teach with us? But in the past, I'd already had other dudes be like, hey, I want to be one of your instructors.
They're chasing you a little bit.
And I'd be like, I don't have instructors. I don't do that kind of thing. Like, well, I want to do this. And then I was like, okay, once I gave in, then it's like, hey, I want to,
I want to be on that team too.
And I want to do this. So it was almost like the right guys were kind of attracted to
Funny how that works
me.
out.
And we'd already been friends, that friendship had already been there. So it wasn't like, it was a random cold call being like, I want to be one of your instructors. Like, I don't even know who you are.
No, it's organic though.
Yeah. So it just the team just kind of built itself. Guys would present themselves and be like, and now the struggle is to get enough training work going on to where everybody gets a piece of something.
We got to talk about that.
Yeah. But but you mentioned how everybody's kind of doing different things. Like, Sam works with another training company, Warrior Poet Society, who John Lovell and I have a good history together.
Other Ranger.
Another Ranger. But, we know each other through other, things, and it's that's a different story. Maybe get me and him on here, and we'll tell that. And then so Sam's got his own thing, and that's what he does for a living. He doesn't have a regular job. Right. Like I said, I jokingly tell people, it's like, I'm not an insurance agent or a real estate agent. This is what we do. This is what I do for a living. I don't get W-2s from anybody else.
I've been telling people that my whole life. Wait. So you work out? No, that's not what I do. But you can think that.
I do work out, yes. But, I mean, thanks for noticing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't do it so well anymore. But the point of that is like, no, that's not what I do. Yeah.
But like John Jew, one of my other instructors, he's got his own little training company that he's trying to get off the ground. And I totally encourage that. So wherever guys are, whether they're in law enforcement or something like that, and they work with me as they can, as much as they can, or they have their own training company, and I encourage that. What I hope is that he gets so big that he tells me one day, like, look, I'm just gonna, I want to break away and do my own thing.
Good for him.
You'll 100% have my blessing, and how can we work together to support each other? That's my attitude. He won't become my competition, and I don't see it that way. John Dufresne,
I was just about to ask
Duffy's
you about
one
John.
of my freaking favorite people in the world.
John and I just sat across from one another at the dinner table last night, and I hadn't seen him in a year. He was sitting right where you were sitting the last time I saw him, and man, what a solid human being.
Yeah, and I love that guy. We hit it off the instant we met. We did the Ranger thing, and we're two entirely different generations of Rangers. And you would think that
oh yeah,
we've known each other. We were in the Ranger battalion together. So that's what we joke. There's an old joke says you can take the boy out of the battalion, but you can't take the battalion out of the boy.
Yeah, gotcha.
Sam gets mad when we hang out too much. He calls you can't have Ranger moments like that anymore. Especially if Lovell's around and there's all these other Rangers and shit. He gets mad, but anyway.
That relationship there with you guys, and kind of working next side by side. I mean,
he and I have a saying: the rising tide raises all ships. Mm-hmm. There's no reason why we can't all succeed together. And then if somebody needs a boost or something like that, I'm here for you, man. I mean, Duffy's come in and helped as an assistant instructor for me before. We've done collaborative classes. We did a big alumni weekend where you had to be either his or my alumni to come to this thing, and it was a blast. Now we're both so busy we don't have time for that. But,
so let me speak to that too. I mean, just from a business perspective. I mean, but going back to the word community and so forth, that is so different, right? It's such a different approach going back to the competition versus, community. Yeah. I guess maybe if you want to look at
to consider what we do, defensive and tactical style shooting.
Yeah, but the point of this is like, let's think about this for a second. Like, I think the training community, just in those people that purchase training and train regularly, I think it's smaller than most people think that it or believe that it is. Yeah. I think it's of the whole population, right, who claims to train, or certainly those who own firearms, but that's a whole other number. I think it's much smaller. I think you guys you're all sharing the same people. And so any opportunities you can do to show support for one another, bring people together, cross-promote businesses, collaborate. But so that's smart from a business perspective for a lot of reasons. But I'm looking at it from the end user, the consumer piece. How fucking cool is that? Like, I don't show up to the range to listen to an instructor talk shit about the other instructor who's across town or teaches the same things. By the way, it's pistols and carbines. And then there's some fancy equipment that gets involved in here a little bit, which we can talk about for a little bit, but it's pistols and carbines. It's shooting. It's getting out to the range. It's hanging out with people. It's improving your skills. It's becoming more capable. It's all that stuff at the end of the day. So how cool for the consumer to be a part of that, where like I was at the range today with Don Edwards and John Dufresne, like two legends kind of in the business, right? I know it might sound weird to you, like going back to what we were saying before. But how fun for me, like I got this and I met this dude and there was these other guys that showed up that I see on their Instagrams and all that kind of stuff. That's just smart versus like this fucking guy, kind of thing. So anyways, I thought it's important to kind of note just because not a lot of people, we're seeing people start to try and do that. But what's weird in some cases was what I'm watching is the intention is questionable. And what I mean by that is, are they doing that because they're both having a little bit of a tough time filling classes and this is their way to do that? Is this something that they're trying to do to maybe kind of take over a certain region or a certain thing?
And, it's probably okay for that to be a little bit across the board.
From a business perspective, I don't disagree. I'm just saying, how does it come across? Right? Yeah. Because I think that it's going to show up at some point if it isn't rooted in what you just said, which is a really strong relationship where you guys really respect one another.
And I'll give you an example. Like I brought up Chris Costa, and he and I are doing a class together in October up in Ohio.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
And it's one of those things that, like, every time we hang out at SHOT for the past several years, like, we need to get together and do something. We need to get together. And finally, I just called him out, like, dude, are we going to do something or what? I mean, it's going to be, and he's like, what do you want to do? Because he's a little bit more serious than me. And, you know, you might not realize that, but you know, I'm like, dude, I don't care. It's going to be fun as fuck. We'll just make, you know, of course, it's on his website. So go sign up for it on his website. It says it's the Greenline and whatever, but it's his 3-day carbine one.
He's just hosting the,
you know,
the
but
platform.
I'm like, dude, we could just like make the course description like this. Bring all your guns, bring all your ammo, 3 days with Chris and Don. You know, if you need any more information, this is not for you.
It's probably not for you. Yeah.
And you know,
I love it.
And, you know, so that's where I look at it. I was like, dude, you know, it'd be fun. People will come just to watch us, you know, make fun of each other, you know, and our styles and
shoot some guns,
and
man.
shoot guns and I mean, you know, there's going to be serious training going on,
right?
Because we take this seriously, but you got to have fun while you're doing it. And that's another thing I say is like, what I do for a living is too cool not to have fun while we're doing it. And I get up every day and, sometimes it's a grind. You know, I've got like, you know, you're stressed out. You look at some of the numbers of the class registration, like, man, I got to get these numbers up a little bit more or whatever. And that's stressful. But when I'm out on the range doing it,
you're not thinking about any of that.
You know, sometimes I'm thankful if I only have 6 people because you know what that means? That just means I got 6 shooting buddies for the weekend.
Right.
And I get to shoot, you know, so, you know, it's fun. Is it profitable? No, but you know, I don't care because I do care, but I don't because I love what I'm doing and I'm there anyways. And I'll do anything I can do not to cancel a class. But I don't know. That's just the way I was mentored by, you know, certain guys. Actually, the late James Yeager was a really close friend of mine and a really good mentor of mine when it comes to stuff like that. And that's one of the things he said. He's like, do whatever you can do to not cancel a class. He's like, I've taught classes at a loss before to not cancel it. And, you know, I took that to heart and, it definitely.
Yeah, what you do is you build. There's integrity in that, but it's also recognizing the value that does exist sometimes, and sometimes you have to take it on the chin financially to get to reap rewards. Or it's like a tuition payment, you know, for the future.
And you know, I mean, on one hand,
can't do it too many times.
On one hand, I love doing it, and you know, I want to be out there with the guys. On the other hand, it's like, you know,
there's a business.
Activity breeds activity, and if nobody sees you doing anything, it's easy to forget about you.
There is a business at the end of the day that we have to talk about. Let's transition into that a little bit. Let's talk about Greenline. Let's talk about what you're doing. Like, there's a variety of stuff out there, and just to kind of put it out there, a lot of people know you, and this is, you know, I'll be honest, like we brought Sam up a couple times. One of the things that popped up for me early on was the night vision stuff.
Right.
I am not in that game. Not yet. Exactly. This is the conversation I've been having all weekend with people, right? As it continues to evolve. And it's not because I don't want to be in that game. I just know where my bandwidth is. There's other things that I need to be doing right now. But there's a financial, you know, commitment piece to all that. It's calculated, but I am fascinated by it. And you guys were specifically, you were guys that popped up for me, you know, sort of right away. So there's that. But there's a lot of other things that you do, and there's a lot of different. I mentioned this earlier. One of the things that struck me is the variety of people that you're working with. So let's talk about kind of the model right now and kind of what's happening and what you're doing.
Yeah, well, like I said, you know, the team that we kind of have is pretty. I guess you would say multidisciplinary.
That's a good word.
You know, I like to brag about Eric Vargas because you know he's one of the top sniper dudes in the world. I mean, he was a team leader for the team that just won the international sniper competition. That's how I justify saying that. But he's also super humble, Ranger sniper, you know, competitive dude. And but so not only is he like one of the top long gunners ever, he's a GM. You know, he can shoot a pistol better than you too. You know? He could run that PC. He's a GM in PCC, you know, and stuff like that. So it's like, you know,
take your pick.
Take your pick. You know,
he just is passionate about the long gun.
Yeah, he's focusing more on that because that's what he's doing competitively these days and stuff like that. But you know, and I have guys that you know maybe pistol is more their thing. So you know, I'm trying to get things to where I can send them and like, hey, look, then let's do you more the
give the people what they want, huh?
Low light pistol is what you love to do.
Give them what they want.
Then you know, let them do what comes naturally. Equip. You know, and that's kind of my team building philosophy is get the right people for the job and equip them to do what comes naturally
Give
to
them
them.
the autonomy to do it well. Yeah.
To do what they already know how to do or are wired to do. And that's kind of,
simple premise.
I mean, and that's kind of a Special Forces A team in a nutshell. Teach them what they need to know to do the job they need to do after you've chosen the right person for the job, and then give them what they need to do their job.
Trust them to do their job.
Exactly.
Yeah. How's that working out?
I mean, so far so good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a proven model. It's how I was brought up and everything. So it seems to be working out pretty good. I've got good guys. We're trying to get a lot more things going on. A lot of them come to us because they're also like they want to learn more about night vision, or they've been been to some of our stuff. So Sam kind of heads up, especially the techie side of what we do night vision wise.
SME for sure.
You're gonna have a hard time finding somebody who knows more about night vision than the technical aspects and all that stuff of it than Sam. You might find people that know as much, but you're gonna have a hard time beating it.
Yeah, my experience has been a little bit with him, like kind of one-on-one, and then just kind of seeing what he's doing publicly, but I haven't found anybody yet. So
he's come up with this like 100 question test that we're requiring these guys to be able to pass before we're like, you can teach a night fighter.
I love it. There's a standard.
I don't even think now you can take it as many times as you want, but it's like, these are the things that you should know the answers to if people are asking you questions in class. And it's nerdy shit. I don't think I've passed it cold turkey yet, but I'm grandfathered in because I wrote the program. So, I signed the front of the check.
Yeah, exactly. I get it. You can't take some liberties there.
Right. Yeah. But no, so, mentoring those guys in those aspects, plus just being, part of the crew, and, I'm getting down the night vision rabbit hole, but, both Sam and I and Eric Butler, who teaches with us, we all work together at TNBC. So we've been in the night vision industry space side of things for a long time. So, it's not just that, I was a SF dude who used night vision when I was in. I've been involved in the night vision industry,
the development
of
the
sales, and the products and the testing of products.
The people.
I know, and I know more than
sourcing.
I know more than just the equipment that I was issued when I was in the Army. So, and that's the thing. And I'm not trying to disparage, brothers of mine that are teaching stuff like that. But a lot of times, unless you immerse yourself, unless you're really, truly a gun guy, about M4s, PEC 15s, and PVS 31s.
Look, man, I'm not that much of a gun guy. I'm a freedom guy. I just like guns.
Yeah. But, it's like, so that's one of the things I think that just, not that other night fighter programs are bad. One of the things that sets ours apart is we're very much about the education and the information. And we spend a lot of time in the classroom before we ever go to the range. I mean, hours in the classroom.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because in the past year, probably and a half now, I've been through several courses where that should have that classroom time and didn't have it. And then I've been through, when I say several, let's just say a couple, and then I've been through others where we did spend that classroom time. And what I've noticed in that process, for me, I love it because you're just getting it. You're drinking from a fire hose a lot of times, depending on where you're coming into it, but you're getting a sense of what's going on. It might be completely going over your head at times, but at the same time, you're in a space where you can start to pull the information together. You see how other people are dealing with it, right? And then when you go out to the range, like now you're taking it into the practical application, you see how it works. I'm not trying to process all that information all at the same time.
Right, cold turkey.
And those folks that may be getting a little antsy, ants in their pants while they're in the classroom, they ultimately recognize the same thing. I think I just understand it better because I learn really well that way.
Okay.
But it's atypical of how the typical firearms instruction space has been.
And I say really the only one that we spend that kind of time in the classroom is night fighter. It's very informational. But, I do speak a lot in all my classes. One of the things that is really important to me is when you leave, it's more important that you understand why I showed you how to do something this way than it is to be good at it. You can go practice being good at it, but if you're at the range 2 weeks after the class and you're like, why was this important to Don?
Right.
So I'll go over and over. This is why I think this is the way to do it in the context that we're here for. Like I said, if you're going to a USPSA match next weekend, this may not be what's going to win the stage for you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get, carjacked at the gas pump on your way home from the range today, this is what I'm preparing you for, and that's why I think this works.
Mm-hmm.
And this is as soon as somebody shows me a better way, and I validate that, then I'll put out something different. But this is what I think. This is why I think this. And if you don't, because to me, if you can't articulate that, then you're just probably regurgitating something somebody else said once.
Yeah, I think that's super important to lay down some groundwork for the whys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people come in and they're just like, hey, it's a convenient class. This looks cool. I want to do this. There's not a lot attached to it beyond that. Like, or let me say there's no depth to it. So they can walk away feeling disappointed. But what are you disappointed for? Because there wasn't like a developed, like why you were there in the first place. And so you could be working as hard as you want to as an instructor, but if that person doesn't understand why they're doing what they're doing, and that has to be, they have to take personal responsibility for that.
There is that.
You can't provide that for them.
No, I can't force them to drink.
But yeah, exactly.
Only Chuck Norris can make a horse drink.
Right. But yes, it's the leading them to the trough and compelling them to want to drink the water. Right. Or compelling them to drink it. And
because I could easily take the attitude of, well, I already got your money, so let's just do this.
Right. Like, why should I try this? Why should I think differently? Why should I change my mind? Why should I block out whatever that other thing that's been in my head all day since I walked on the range? Like, I don't want to walk into that situation that way as a student. And sometimes as an instructor, you have to recognize that and kind of go at it. Yeah. A little bit of it.
And, sometimes you can't avoid it.
Totally.
Stuff happens.
Totally. So going back, so there's there's several different classes.
Right.
You have several different instructors that are coming at things from different angles, different strengths, obviously, but very, very things that they want to do that they really love doing.
Or they have the background in it.
Which it goes to this, old cliche, which is iron sharpens iron thing,
right.
Where if you've got a guy over here, again, we brought up Sam a couple times, or John as an example, like if you're talking with John, night vision nerds, right? And then you come over here to Vargas, and he's the long range nerd.
Yeah.
Well, he's not spending as much time. Well, he might be a grandmaster shooter with all these in all these different classes. He's not spending all that time with the night vision, and vice versa. So each helps each other grow in a team environment versus trying to learn it some other way. Yeah. So I think that's super cool. I'm just wondering how it's all working out.
Well, I mean, so far so good. Yeah. It definitely is. Like I said, the big thing now is I've got enough instructors. I've got to make sure that I have stuff for them to do, and whatnot. But no, it definitely is, and like I said,
it's the chicken or the egg thing, right?
You brought up Vargas. He has other responsibilities, so he's not always available. John, he's retired, operations sergeant from the military, so he's got a lot of strengths when it comes to the management side of things too. He's running his own business. He's pretty much free. If I need him last minute, something. Sam can't make it to help me with the class. Hey, John, what are you doing this weekend? I could use you down down here in this class. He'd be like, I'm on my way, because he's flexible. So, and so it just kind of depends. So I've got, a pretty decent mix of, right now. And I say, and I have enough people right now, guys. So, it's working out pretty good. Like, Eric Butler has a regular, he's got a big boy job as he calls it, but it's flexible as long as we can plan ahead. So, we're looking at another guy to come in and maybe do some more snipery stuff along with Eric, because Eric's got a lot going on.
Well, I think it's interesting too, because it provides opportunity for people that do have a lot going on but still want to contribute and can contribute. You're giving them an opportunity to do that. I'm seeing some other guys out there do that, and I'm also watching them do that. This is what I think is really cool. Some of the guys that are doing that for other guys now were trying to do it on their own. And because they had other things going on, or because they're maybe not strong business people, or they don't have they have more liability, right? Kids, wives, all mortgage payments and all that stuff.
Yeah.
They're in a different place. They can't necessarily commit, invest, and do the things they need to do to get the thing going fast enough.
Yeah.
And it takes time, right, to be able to pay the bills. So providing somebody like that an opportunity, and so that they can make money, but takes the pressure off of having to do it.
Yeah, or
just still be their own man.
Or just continue to do what they're passionate about.
Correct. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You're giving them a place, a time, and a space with that autonomy, right, and trust to do it. So they feel like they're part of something bigger because you've allowed them to be part of it rather than voluntold them to do something or whatever else. I think that's interesting.
They're grown ass men that can do whatever they want. Yeah. And one of the things that's interesting to me is I'm honored by the caliber of guys that have approached me to want to, work with me and stuff like that. It's like, just
so it's a privilege for you.
It is. It's like, I don't know if I'm, it's like, this may not be as amazing over here at Greenline Tactical as you think it is. Like, no, bro. It's like I said, I got Eric Vargas. When I he's really the only guy that I asked. I was like, do you want? And I think I said, do you want? And he said, yes. I was like, yes. I was like, I haven't finished my question. He's like, yes. Like, I've been waiting for you to ask me, and I was like, wow.
Well, I think that goes back to what I was trying to articulate before, and that is just the circle of people and those people that you're involved with, and the trust and the friendships, and good dudes you typically hang out with other good dudes, and those recommendations and that trust. If somebody says, "Hey, Don's a good dude," well, then that's it. Then we know, right? like we know. And when you have people that are that willing to help, and again, we see a lot of bad stuff, happen and I think it starts with too many bro conversations and not enough professional conversations.
And there's a lot of ego. And there's a lot of, that I say,
who's the man?
I would say A-type, but it's stereotypical alpha,
I think the A-type comes with being an alpha, but the A-type is not really it. It is strictly, it's an emotional attachment to that ego, dude.
Yeah, that ego.
It fucks up everything.
I would say that I'm pretty confident.
Yep.
But don't think anybody that knows me would ever say that I've got a big ego.
That's not confident. Is not egotistical, right?
That goes back to the whole the SF guy thing. I think, and you may have met interviewed other guys with similar backgrounds to mine.
A lot of guys, yeah.
And most dudes that are I'm not talking about D-boy guys and stuff like that, but Army Green Beret type of guys are generally that personality. It's like, we're A-type dudes.
Let's go get it done.
But that personality profile is usually, but we don't really feel the need to be in the spotlight or in charge all the time.
I think
that's one of the big personality traits that I know they select for for that job.
Right.
It's like, you need
to be a team guy.
You need to be an alpha, but you're not going to be the boss.
Right. You need to be on a team.
You need to be totally okay with being told, go do this.
Right.
And then the idea being like, hey, it could be like, Scott, Don, team sergeant, hey, Scott, Don, you guys are going to go, this is what I need you to do, and Scott, you're in charge. And you'd be like, okay. And I'm like, fuck yeah, I don't have to be in charge today. It's like, yeah, you're in charge. If this doesn't go well, it's on you, But then we go off there and we kick it in the ass, right? Here's your suitcase full of money, go overthrow the Taliban.
Right. Or whatever.
Yeah. That's like probably the boil down the job description of a Green Beret. You got the guys on horseback and all that stuff that literally did that, and and they had minimal direction and minimal support.
Yeah.
And that's why you got grown ass men.
Yeah, you
doing
have to
those
adapt.
jobs.
Yep.
It's not a young man's job; it's a wise man's job.
That's actually I think you don't get to where you're at without that, right? And it's not to badmouth or say anything poorly about anything. It's just that what we're seeing is people growing up, making their mistakes, doing their thing. And we've got a guy who's done a lot of that. You already said all that. It was an evolution was the word that you used. Evolutions don't happen overnight.
No.
It takes time. There's all the stuff that you're doing with Greenline now and bringing people in and continuing to evolve it. You're still hustling. I know that, right?
That's what this week is all about.
That's exactly why you're here. I think that's a testament to, the commitment level that you have to all this. Greenline's not going anywhere, right?
Well, I'll put it this way. I don't have a backup plan.
So that goes back to the having the other job, the other thing. This is what Don does, right? Yeah. So and I highly respect that. Like you are all in on it, and so all in that you're bringing other people in to help you with that, and they see that you're all in. And I also believe that's has a good deal to to do with why people want to work with you. Yeah. Like you're not You're not playing business.
It's not
here.
a part-time job for me.
You're not playing business. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people here at this show this weekend that are playing business.
Oh yeah.
And speaking of which, I think the at the end of the day, you're taking time out for me, and I know we tried to do this before, and it didn't work out as we mentioned earlier. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate and respect that you wanted to spend time with me today to chat.
See, I would say the same thing.
No,
it's like I appreciate you. Give me an opportunity to talk to your people.
It's just. Here's the thing, though. Like it's our people. When you look at going back to that Venn diagram and the community aspect of things. Again, the communities within the communities. Anybody that takes time out, particularly a place like this, because I was just having this conversation with Gabe from Cobalt, who you know really well.
Oh yeah,
like,
he's one of my closest friends.
Yeah. I mean, again, good dudes, right? Another good dudes. But the point of this is this costs money. Right? Like we're here investing in our business. So the fact that you took out a couple hours for today to invest in me and in this conversation means a ton to me, man. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And likewise, I appreciate your time.
Yeah. I mean, again, when I just go back to kind of what I was saying from the beginning, like when I started in this and the people that I was sort of looking to for direction and not inspiration, but like as a resource, you've been that guy for me for a long, long time. So this is fun to catch up on some of the background that I didn't know about, but also the evolution of the business from one business guy to another. Fuck, dude. Killing it, man. I appreciate that. Keep it up.
Well, shoot.
Yeah.
Thanks for the vote of confidence. Sometimes I'm not sure about that.
We don't have a choice, right?
Yeah, like, exactly. Sometimes, as they say, I don't know.
I burned all the lifeboats a long fucking time ago. Like
may the bridges you burn light your path.
So that said, I'm gonna let you get out of here and get down and get back to the business at hand of building that business, holding it together, and continue to make an influence or make an impact and be an influencer. Man. Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.